Jake Sisko dreams about a sloping floor. Jake Sisko has a calculus test in the morning, and Altrina vomited all over the table. Can you believe it? Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine, Season 2, Episode 9, Second Sight. Story by our good pal, Mark O'Connell, and teleplay by Mark O'Connell, Ira Stephen Bear, and Robert Hewitt Wolf, all good friends of the show. This was November 21st, 1993. Where were you? What's up, Cirroc? How are you?
1993. I'm good. I'm really good. What a fun episode for me to kind of go back in the time machine and watch.
Totally. It's like a double time machine. So everybody at home, we never actually watched and reviewed this episode because our good friends, Malissa Longo, Kat R. King, and Heather Jordan reviewed this episode for us 3 short but long years ago. And so for Cirroc, it's a time machine of like 29 years ago. But for both of us, it's also kind of a time machine of 3 years ago because it's like all our old buddies. You were a baby in this episode.
Yeah, which is funny because that mirrors the kind of the doubleness of this character that's in this episode, having 2 of this character. But yeah, it's been a long time. I was really pleasantly surprised by the opening scene. I really liked it. I thought it was a good father-son moment. I liked the energy that was there between Sisko and Jake, and him consoling him for that bad dream. I really enjoyed that moment. I thought it was special, and it reminded me of the journey that we took to go through so many different things. There's a line there where he says, "Oh, so you've been talking to Nog about women again?"
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh yeah, that's how how Jake and Nog started and all of that. And it was just so good to see those moments, and obviously the adolescents being young. And I remember kind of having those type of conversations, with your parents and stuff when you're going that age. So it was good.
Yeah, it's a NAM for Nog, everybody, a non-appearance mention for Nog, so we can check that one out. Yeah, that very opening scene, there were 2 things that hit me. The first was just when I first pushed play and you see the exterior of Deep Space Nine with the ship docked, and I actually audibly said, "Yay," because I was like, oh my God, there's one more episode that I get to see. I was just like, wow, This is so cool.
Yeah.
And it's so cool for some reason that it's an old one. I don't know. It made it feel so much more special that it was an old one. And I knew it was going to have the old theme song, which in a way I kind of liked better. It's just more beautiful and sad and melancholy and hopeful. But then right after that, it jumps into a father-son scene with Jake and Benjamin. And I was like, how the hell did we almost let this one slip through our fingers? You know what I mean? Like we almost didn't review. And now it feels so precious to me that wow, we almost let this one slip away. And we have basically like bonus material between Jake and Captain Sisko on top of this bonus episode. It was a really special moment for me. I loved it.
Yeah, and I have to agree with the fact that, having now watched this series and knowing, how things progress, it was a real special treat at going back to this moment in time before things started to get really crazy and everything starts to really hit the fan. I felt like, this is the time in the ship when everybody was feeling each other out, getting to know each other. There was a lot of growth in this early development.
Kira was still rough around the edges.
Yeah. And I love that.
Odo looked a little different. O'Brien had some kind of different haircut. He looked young. It was weird.
He did. And Odo did look a little bit different to me.
Yeah, he did.
So I did feel a sense of the early beginnings of DS9, and kind of this felt like a time period when it was not as dramatic as it ends up becoming towards the later seasons with all the war stuff. You could just feel a chill in the air. All the station's kind of melancholy. It's a relaxation type of moment. There wasn't really a sense of uh, urgency or desperation. It was very a nice, evenly kind of relaxed. This is a day a day in the life of Deep Space Nine type of feel to it. So I really enjoyed that as well.
The innocence of youth.
Yeah.
The series was only 2 years old, barely 2 years old, just like Jake Sisko.
And then you start to see things in a different way. So, like, as I'm looking at this character, Fenna,
yeah,
I'm comparing her to Cassidy, right? So I'm looking at her, I'm like, would she have made it better? So I'm thinking, how would that have worked out? And then I'm thinking, no, I think Cassidy has, the total package for what Sisko needs.
Definitely a different character type. You're right. Like, I'm finna compare the two for just a moment here.
Yeah. Are you finna do that?
It feels like, and I didn't even make that connection, but that's really good thinking there. Like Cassidy, when we look at Cassidy, now maybe this might just be that she was in 15 or 20 episodes, so she was much more fleshed out, but there was more of a vulnerability to her. There was more, obviously depth, but you get that with way more episodes. Whereas this lady Fenna, and Sisko does kind of mention it. He's like, you always say the perfect thing. She was almost like somebody's wish or somebody's dream because she was perfect. And Cassidy was far from perfect and totally owned it. She was like, no, this is who I am. This is what you get. Take it or leave it. And I'm going to flash an adorable smile and walk away and let you think about it.
Yeah. Cassidy definitely had more pizzazz and kind of a spunk to her attitude. She would have that little talk back, and her, I don't mess with me, don't play with my stuff, and I do what I do. I'm an independent person, so there was a lot of that to who she was, and I think that matches well with Sisko's character. I think that's the kind of person that he would need to keep him interested, and so it makes sense to me that he would be more with a Cassidy type of personality. But clearly he was physically attracted because obviously.
Well, you know what else too? Now that you mention that, they were the right person for that time in his life, right? When he met Cassie, what was it? Probably season 4, maybe season 5. He was stronger. He had more growth. He had more healing. He was older. When he met this lady Fenna, what did he just say? He just remembered that it was the 4-year anniversary of his wife's death. So he was feeling sad. He was feeling weak. He was feeling vulnerable. Maybe he couldn't handle back sass. Maybe he couldn't handle someone strong and independent and sassy. Maybe he just, he still had this wound in him. And at this point in his life, he just wanted somebody that said the perfect things every time and made him feel good and said that she loved him within like 5 minutes of meeting him, practically, where I was like, whoa, dude, there are a few whoa moments, but that's, when we're hurt and we're vulnerable and we're trying to heal, a lot of times that's what we need. We need like, this love bombing or like, something like that, more so than when we're strong and we're ready to take on the world again. Then we can handle somebody that is of a like mind like that.
Yeah, and the other thing I thought about while I was watching this episode was when you are a single parent and you are possibly interested in seeing people and building a relationship with another person, that is a big moment for the child, right? Because if you start dating somebody that's not that person's mother or something to that degree, then it could be a psychological kind of, it's going to have an impact on that child, right? Especially if it gets serious and you start, becoming a family essentially. That's where you have these step situations, stepfather, this and that. But one of the big things that's a hurdle or an obstacle or a challenge for the parent is having the approval of the child saying, I'm good with you.
Totally.
Being with somebody, it's cool with me. I get that you have to move on. You have your needs or whatever, however that is expressed through a conversation. But essentially, that's what it means. It's like, I'm good with it. It's my stamp of approval. I'm all right with it. It won't, I get that you need somebody. And I think that's what was really the opening scene was Jake saying to his dad, I miss my mom, and then later on, you get something to the effect where he says, are you in love? And he's asking, Sisko, are you in love? Or like, what's up with you?
Because Nog, the old wise one, told him
right about the signs,
Yeah.
And so, but Jake says it's okay with me, and that's to me was a big kind of allowed Sisko to say, "Oh, okay, well, my son has reached a maturity level where, and is able to have coped with the loss of his mom, and he's at a point now where." He is able to comfortably deal with the idea of me, moving on and finding somebody else. I think that's a big issue for a lot of people out there.
Yeah, and that. I mean, it was such a great moment because that Jake is not just doing this, like faking it, to make his dad happy, or he's just saying the words but not meaning it, because he's like, I want to meet her. Like, he's legitimately excited about, hey, there could be somebody in my life here that makes my dad happy. Maybe she'll make me happy. I want to meet. I thought it was really cool that he's like, I want to meet her, rather than just saying, hey, go out there and have fun, Dad. Good luck. He's like, yeah, let's, hey, is there room for 3 in this picnic?
Yeah. And I thought that Sisko there gave a good response, which is one that I would give. It's just, I think it's too soon for that, right? Because you don't want to introduce somebody if you are dating and introduce your dates to everybody, to your kid all the time. It's like, Dad, you're dating. Yeah, I met this the 8th person I met in the last 6 months. It's like, it's not a good deal. So you have to make sure that they pass all the hurdles before you get to the stage where you're comfortable to introduce them to your kid. It's like, okay, we're getting serious. I know that we want to build a life together, and I want to introduce you to my kid. It's not really the best thing to be doing, to introduce all your dates that are potentials, but not really serious potentials to the family structure, because that will have a traumatic, I believe, effect in the long run.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of if Sisko was on a dating app, what that dating app would be. But I can't think of one. So everybody in the comments below, probably more clever than I am. So come up with something. If Sisko were on a dating app, and that's why he's like, dude, I can't introduce you to every single girl I meet. Okay, like every new shuttle pod that shows up, or shuttlecraft, or spaceship, or whatever, I start swiping again. Anyway,
the app is called Hook, and it's for captains only.
Oh, okay, that's very good. It's got a nice hook to it. I like that. Wow.
Yeah, that's
no need, everybody. I got this one.
I've been on there a few times on Hook.com.
But no, captain of. You're the captain of your high school basketball team, but nothing since then.
Yes, exactly. Co-captain, even at that. It wasn't exactly the full out captain, but yeah, and just like the seeing the youngness in everybody, like this is Sisko pre goatee,
yep,
and pre bald head. So that was another thing. It's just a different look, and I don't know. There was a sense of nostalgia looking at this and just kind of watching this episode. I really felt
totally.
I felt like, oh, this is something really that I savor. You know, when you put that one piece of dessert away and you've just been savoring, you want to savor each bite.
Yeah.
This was one of those moments where I enjoyed the slowness of the pace, where I might have not enjoyed it earlier watching it. I would have probably said, this is kind of slow. What's going on? There's no action. There's nobody like
Yeah.
who's dying? What's going to happen? There's no real drama in this episode. But I kind of enjoyed it because it allowed me to savor the moments and sit there and watch the kind of Sisko was very playful in this episode. I thought, like, when he comes to ask Odo for a favor, he's kind of like asking, like, you know, because he's asking as a friend and not as the captain. So normally when he comes in, he's like, Odo, I need you to do this, this, and this. It's more like orders. But in this case, he was like,
kind of beating around the bush a little bit.
He's like, yeah, so there's this thing that I kind of need your help with.
She's got long, beautiful locks of hair. She was wearing red, big brown eyes. You know the type.
Odo's like,
he's like, relax, bro.
Yeah. What's her name? You don't know. Okay. You're head over heels in love with somebody you have no idea about.
And by the way, I am wearing the same shirt that I wore when Kat, Heather, and Melissa reviewed this episode. I went back and watched it. It was a nice, cool Led Zeppelin shirt because we did pop in for the first couple minutes just to say, hey, how are you to everybody? And then drop it off to them. And we cut out and did our fun holiday stuff 3 years ago. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that wearing that same special shirt. But I did want to say that I completely agree with you about this episode, that it was so special to me. And I wouldn't have had it any other way, because we've had like basically 3 seasons of high drama, of darkness, of war. And it was so nice to look back at like the good old days or the happy times or the innocence of youth or whatever it was, you know, and maybe
even seeing Dax,
Dax,
like,
that's true.
I mean, seeing Jadzia, you know, I was like, oh, there she is. Because, you know, we hadn't seen her for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
Coming up with season 7.
Yeah, it was like, I agree that if we had seen this 3 years ago, would we have judged the episode more harshly? Whereas today, it feels like exactly what I needed, exactly what I wanted. There's no new Deep Space Nine episodes ever again. And I want to look back and kind of remember them how they were, you know, like you like to look back at, you know, people like to look back at their kids as, oh, when they were 5 or whatever, you know, whatever it is, there's like some precious moment in there. And it was so nice to just look back and just see them, fussing about off something that's not even really that important compared to what we know they go through later. And they're just like, oh, there's a mystery to solve, you guys. And darn it, I kissed a girl and I'm not sure if she even exists. And it was just so charming. I loved it. I loved it to pieces.
I did too. And another thing that stood out to me in the beginning, just off of the opening scene and, you know, just prior to the credits rolling, opening credits, this was you said November 1993.
Yeah.
And this is November 1993. And all I could think of as I was watching the opening scene, I was thinking, wow, this is a Star Trek show that has a black family opening this show. And it's basically an all black opening because it cuts from the dream sequence to Sisko and Fenna. So I'm thinking, wow, this is a Star Trek show in 1993 that has an all black cast opening their show, you know, for this episode. And I'm thinking, this is the kind of forward thinking, the kind of diversity, the kind of groundbreaking ideas that they were putting on television in this time period. And it was completely being unnoticed for that particular reason. That aspect of it was being overlooked. and I believe that it's something that is significant when you look at it in hindsight.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that because of the fact that this show was so successful in normalizing this kind of thing. So they have a hand in making this less noticeable because they normalize this. They weren't just like, oh my God, we're going to be doing this and we're going to be doing that. They just, hey, it's a dad and a son, and they're talking about the mom, the wife. Then he's meeting another lady. And, I really can't think of another word other than normalizing that for us 30 years ago, to the point where now it does take someone like you to kind of point that out, because they've succeeded in normalizing that for us in trailblazing. But back then it was not normal at all. It was trailblazing, and they should absolutely be commended for that. I agree.
Yeah, and the idea of normalizing, I think that's a very good point you brought up as well, because it does feel so natural that it doesn't feel like it's something to point out. It doesn't seem like it's misplaced. For example, like, whoa, this is something that I'm not used to. It seems like you're used to it when you're watching a conversation between a father and son, and and having these kind of personal moments. So it's just kudos to the writing. Once again, I just think that if you write good stories with depth and believable um, um, scenario, situations, and dialogue, then you don't have to say, "Hey, look at me! Look what I'm doing over here. I've got a black guy standing here, and he's black."
And it's also
You know,
believable relationships.
right?
Like, it just feels so normal and good and happy, and we just get sucked into watching a father and son. And I know that Deep Space Nine is finally now getting, the kudos that it deserves for having such a healthy and wholesome relationship. And this was a very wholesome episode, in my opinion, as well. It's just so refreshing, and I just hope that Deep Space Nine continues to get their flowers for what they did, because this is the best, I think, parent to child relationship in all of Star Trek ever.
Very soft moments there. I really love the energy between Avery and I in that opening scene. I thought it was great. The way he was listening, the way he puts his arm around my shoulder. Just there's certain things, there's just subtle moments there that are just good parenting to me. That's what good parenting is actually, is listening to your kid, being involved, asking questions, tell me about it, what happened, what's going on in your mind, what are you thinking about? And I think that's an example of good parenting. And thankfully, Avery has those kind of parental instincts, because that's what makes it so authentic when you see it on display.
Yeah. So the chemistry between the two of you is undeniable. It's really good. Off camera, clearly you guys had a very good bond, and it shows on camera. Let's take a super quick break and hop on to the second half of this time machine we call Second Sight, which is ironically called Second Sight because it's kind of our first sight of this episode.
Well,
But
it's our second sight because we actually did review it, but now we're watching it, the two of us, as our first sight, but the show's second sight.
right.
So it's the seventh rule, second sight.
What a paradox. Oh my God, this is madness. All right. We'll be right back on the seventh rule, the paradox champ of the world.